What's going on? This minute or so to start sharing this out there into the world of social media so that you can share something that one of your friends will actually get something out of the show. This is not political. This is a great show for you guys to be able to. This is a great show for you guys to be able to share what's going on in the world, share positivity. Of course, this is when a little bit of my signal is dropping out, as I can see from Emily making that comment. But hopefully, as you're joining in, we should be back to better signal in just a second. So let's get started with. What's going on, everybody? This is having possibly some technical difficulties. Let me know. Emily's saying it's still bad. So we are going to bring her up. I'm excited. I'm just going to do an intro. Hopefully we have 2 bars, which should be enough. It's trying to be in Austin at this point. But if not, we might just restart the episode. We'll see what happens in just a minute. But guys, I am very excited to have this guest on. She is going to actually have her own podcast with the Be the Change Network, which is going to be awesome. It's going to be called Questions Unraveled. We'll talk more about that on the show. Emily, the great thing about Emily, she can carry a show on her own. So if we have some technical difficulties, she's going to be ready to rock, kick the tires, light the fires. Changemakers is all about people that are creating change in the world around them, in their own lives, and how they have gotten to the place they are today. And hopefully their stories can help your stories and help your life create change in your own world. So again, I think I was probably a little clicky before. You probably couldn't hear me. So I'm going to say it again. Share this out there. This show is not about politics. This show is about being the change you can see in the world. This show is something that you can share without worrying that your friends are going to judge you for beliefs. This is all about creating positive change and being an inspiration to those around you. And I hopefully you guys get something from this episode. So hit the like button, hit the thumbs up button. Dave, I see you. Put some comments in there. Let me know where you guys are talking from. Jeanette wants some positivity today. I know all of you guys can use it. We can all use it. Ashley Renee is in the house. It looks like that is Emily's sister-in-law. I love it. All right, guys, it's time to bring up Emily. Ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, our change maker for this week and future host of Questions Unraveled on the Be the Change Network, Emily Nicole.
Hello.
Great timing for the internet to start to cut out. So sorry about that, Em. I would love it if you could introduce yourself a little bit to our audience today.
Sure. So I'm excited to be here, guys. My name is Emily Nicole Robbins. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. I'm a curve model / speaker, entrepreneur. Don't know what I'm doing 20-something. I do know that I enjoy conversation. I definitely like to challenge people. And when I came across Be the Change and met Anthony in Atlanta, we just had very aligned goals and ambitions. And here I am. And I'm excited to not only be a part of Be the Change very soon, but just to have some healthy conversations that could possibly not only shift conversations in your home, but also in the way that you think. And that's kind of what I'm here for.
I love it. And I'm going to go ahead, since you're going to be starting this week with your podcast. I'm also going to put up in the bottom, if you want to follow our podcast, I have how you can support us below. We've got PayPal, we've got Venmo, but my goal with everybody is to be part of our Patreon community, because we do provide other stuff. Might even have Emily drop some nuggets on you guys, maybe do a weekly or bi-weekly video where she gives like 2 minutes of Mondays, do Getting Over the Hump Wednesdays with Emily Nicole. But if we have some extra stuff for you, join the Patreon page. That is patreon.com/BeTheChangeUSA. And if you want to find our podcast, It is #BeTheChange.com/podcast. We are on Apple, Spotify, Google. So please subscribe. All of our podcasts are on there. Truth will set you free. Change makers, concert vengers, Make America Think Again with SUNY Blanks, and soon Emily Nicole as well. With that said, I want to get started. I want you to tell essentially your story and why we're doing the podcast with Questions Unraveled, but a little bit about yourself on how you have had bad things happen to you in your life and how you've overcome that trauma.
Absolutely. So for starters, I think we've all been through some mess. And one thing that I've learned throughout my life and where I am today is that the worst thing that has ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. So when we start talking about experiences and what I'm going to share with you, where I've came from, my stories, my trials, things that I've personally experienced, even if you can't relate to them, there's something in your life that has more than likely affected you to the extent to where you're like, holy cow, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Even if you spill coffee on yourself, lucky you if that's the worst thing that's ever happened to you. But that being said, I just want to level that and bring that into awareness that your story is valid and what has happened to you is absolutely just as bad as what might have happened to me. And that's kind of where growth resides, is that trauma is on this level playing field. About me, oh man, I grew up in a really small town. I have super supportive parents. When my parents got divorced, there was definitely some space in being able to keep your eyes on kids, because the truth of the matter is when you're a parent, you do the best to your absolute ability, but there are still things that you're going to mess up on. None of us are perfect. None of us wake up and have this roadmap. And I think the more that we come into adulthood, we look around and we go, yeah, none of us know what we're doing. We're all just children walking around, hoping that we don't forget how to walk when we wake up. That being said, I went through some pretty traumatic crap growing up. I started getting raped around the age of 10 and felt like I could not tell my parents just because I was protecting them. And I think that's where that childlike trauma comes into play, where we think we have to be the protector. I don't know if that was the middle child syndrome, but that did lead into a full-blown drug addiction and alcohol addiction. By the time that I was 14, I was fully dependent on opioids and other drugs, as well as alcohol, which in turn made me believe that that was the cure-all. And I think through that experience, and not only having the ability to hit rock bottom, I was able to see that there's hope. And a lot of people go, holy cow, like, what do you do at rock bottom? Well, I don't think any of us really know. We just hit rock bottom, and then, well, the only place to go is up. So at least you have a foundation now. And as I stepped into not only recovery, but, I was institutionalized and had all these experiences with psychologists and therapists, and was like, holy cow, who am I now? Because one thing about a child who goes through trauma is by the time they hit their late teens, their early 20s, they're like, I did not think I was going to make it this far. Whether that meant socially, education, whatever. So as I walked into adulthood, I had no clue how to function. I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know how to deal with not only my anger, but my sadness. And there are so many adults walking around that are not equipped to do that. And I'm one of them, and I'm still learning. And I think that's where the whole unraveled thing got started, is I was trying to figure out, okay, I have a story. And the more that I talk about it, the more that I realize other people have a story too, regardless of how big or small it is. If they're ashamed of it, if they're proud of it, we all have this story within us. So that being said, that's where Unraveled got started. When I decided that I wanted to unravel and get to my center and heal from my trauma, because as we think about trauma and as we think about how we're going to become better, really the only thing that we can do is address what's going on within us. And that meant looking at how my parents failed me, even though that they loved me, how I failed myself, how my family, my social standards, my class, where I grew up, wealth, poverty, whatever it may be, all those painful, uncomfortable things that were like, let's just push it to the edge because now it's over. It's not like just because I was raped at 15, that means that every single day I should deal with it. But in all reality, until you deal with it, it's going to chase you. It's going to come after you. And I got to a point about 2 years ago where it started dealing with me. And I was like, holy shit, what am I going to do? I have no control over myself. And I realized that I just had to unravel, lose a little bit of control, have some hard criticism, face some awful truths that it was time to heal. And I'm super excited to be where I am today.
Emily, I got to stop you because I always, part of what I would automatically or immediately drew me to you and your ability to speak and create change and talk to people is your poise and your ability to cathartically look at your own life, and then finding out how old you are, which I think the audience should know how old you are because it's always very surprising to me. Emily, how old are you?
22. I just turned 22.
Again, incredibly impressive because, as you said, people in their teens that went through with what you went through sometimes are shocked when they make it to their 20s, and then they take their 20s to relearn who they are, and then in their 30s they're just this unstoppable force if they make it there. And unfortunately, I see some comments in the box, and I send love to Barbara, and I'm very sorry for what it seems as though you've gone through as well. And Rose has a comment that says, I'm sorry to hear this for you, Emily. Hugs to you. And I think what the key to this message that Emily is going to continue to share is it's almost, you don't wish this upon anyone, but I don't know, and I'm going to ask you this right now, would you change anything about what you went through to get to where you are?
Oh man, I like that question. I absolutely would not. And it's so funny to think about that because my mom and I have completely repaired our relationship and we're extremely close now. And we sit in this space. She was actually just at my house the other day because about 5 months ago, I lost my brother to addiction. And he was my best friend, my ally. And she was sitting on my couch and she said, man, I miss him so much. And we're having this dialogue and this connectivity where I'm able to look at her and say, there was a time when I hated you and I didn't know if I could ever have this relationship with you. And to be able to get to a place where you can not only communicate with someone that you have these odds against, but also, honestly, all of our anger is just hurt. And to be at this place where my mom and I are sitting on the couch and we're just like talking about these things that have happened between us and analyzing it and going, I'm so glad we made it here. No matter how difficult it was, because we had to have some uncomfortable conversations, not only about how she failed, but how others failed her. Because if I'm being real with you, any type of failure that a parent goes through, and I wouldn't even call it a failure. I think being a parent is probably one of the hardest things that you could ever do. And you know that. I mean, you're a dad. I mean, there's tough calls you have to make constantly, and you don't come first. And really, it's just about breaking generational curses. And we're so aware of that now. We sit and we talk and we're like, how are we going to move forward? Now my mom's my best friend, and that's because we got uncomfortable. I went off topic a little bit, but I just had to share that.
But you went off topic, but you unraveled the topic to still make it make sense. But no, in all reality, the key is, and a lot of people, and people have said this to me too, about issues with my dad being compulsive gambler. Like, I'm sorry you had to go through that. That's the wrong way to look at life.
Absolutely.
That is the wrong way to look at tragedy. That's the wrong way to look at victimhood, because we've all been through something. And to feel sorry for somebody presents a way of, you're essentially casting a victim mentality onto them. That doesn't help them grow. Instead, you've been blessed with a very bad past. And I know that sounds weird. You've been blessed with a bad past because you can actually change other people. If you make it out, God willing it out, you this point, a little clicky. If you get to this point, then you're able to actually tell us, Emily, and I'm going to check my signal. That should be right. Tell me a little bit about what's gone on in the last couple months of your life and what you've dealt with.
Absolutely. So, oh man, I lost my job I decided to go back to school with COVID, which was weird year for everyone. Modeling kind of plateaued. So that meant not as many photo shoots. And that was something that really drove my confidence. And I think a lot of people were very unaware of not only what 2020 would do to everyone, but what it would do for people with drug addiction, PTSD, depression, all of those things that we struggle with are now in a box, and we're facing them because not only can we not go and do things that we love, can we not be around the people that we love. I couldn't go to my support group. I couldn't, talk to my friends that truly helped me address not only my post-traumatic stress disorder, but find ways to deal with it. And I had to learn all those coping skills on my own and lean on myself, which is very hard to do. And I'm still learning how to do it. But to make it short, in the past few months, I think out of everything that has ever happened to me, losing my brother was probably the hardest thing that I've ever experienced. And to be honest with all of you, I was supposed to start this podcast about 6 months ago. And Anthony held it together for me and, still had a little bit of faith in me, which I appreciate so much. But my entire world fell apart. And I remember when my brother passed away and we were getting prepared for the funeral. And I told my mom, I was like, man, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And she looked at me and she said, well, are you going to say anything? And I was like, oh shit. Okay. So we're going to do this. And I'm a very wing it type of person, dysfunctional a little bit, but I woke up that morning of the funeral and I was sitting on my bed and I was like, what am I going to say? And it just all came to me. And I remember standing up and giving the eulogy for my brother. And it was the greatest honor that I've ever experienced in my life, but also the most tragic thing, because when you lose someone to depression or addiction or any of those categorized things, those stigmas, people only see the addiction. They only see the depression. They see the story. And here I am, 5 feet from my brother's casket, sharing this eulogy about how he played with Hot Wheels cars and overcame, all these childhood trials that we faced together. And you realize when you go through grief, it changes you forever. You lose someone and you wonder, how am I going to function? Especially for me, because I was like, man, I'm really getting to a place where I have this life thing figured out. Yeah, I'm fighting my PTSD. I'm dealing with, my depression and compulsion issues and learning how to be a functional adult after a childhood filled with trauma, and then losing a sibling that didn't fully get to experience that is gut-wrenching. And I threw in the towel. I was like, I'm done. I don't care about anything. I don't care about myself. I'm so frustrated. And then this pivotal moment happened for me. And I remember telling myself that it was all about the self that was yet to exist. The part of me that I hadn't met yet. Because we all have that part of us. And I was like, whoever you are, whoever you're going to become, however you are going to face with this, because we have no choice. Everyone says you get through grief, you do these things. But when it happens, you have no control. And I think that's when that hard reality smacks you, where you're like, all right, it's time to deal with this. It's time to get through it and take it day by day. And that's just what I tell myself, to the self that is yet to exist. And I hope that everyone who is facing something hard right now, whether it's addiction, loss, divorce, having trouble having a child, there is a self that is yet to exist that you cannot even fathom. And I know if I could look back on the 12-year-old me that wanted to literally blow her brains out because she felt like she had no worth and no value, and I see who I am today, and I look myself in the mirror and I own that, I find pride in that. And I know that this is just another season that is not only difficult, but will help me.
There's a line from a movie from The Natural. I don't know if it was an original line, but they said in it, Glenn Close said it. She said, "There's a life you learn with and the life you live with after that." And I think that that's an incredibly powerful statement. But I think in the more modern world that was 30 years ago, that is literally the way we go about our daily life. There is the all of the aspects that we've lived with and that we've learned from. We constantly are living with those changes. So to progressively ebb and flow, you had addiction, you had issues in your teenage years that you overcame, but that doesn't, and you learned so much from that, but that doesn't mean that it stops there. The learning doesn't stop there. The learning is, there is going to be God, whatever, spirituality. If you believe in God, I believe in God. He's going to be throwing things at you that are tragedies and unfortunate incidences, and you have to continue to learn and continue to love and continue to move on after that. And that's, I mean, you're a perfect example. You've been through more through 22 years than most people have to go through in half of a lifetime, and you're continuously growing as a person, and that's inspiration to other people. So what kind of advice would you give on how you pivoted? What did you do to start that thought process of overcoming?
Absolutely. So I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a massive realist. I look at things the way that they are. I don't believe in the whole half filled cup. As bad as that sounds, I'm very much so a realist. And I think in order to not only cut the bullshit, but to get into a place of growth is to go, all right, let's analyze the situation. And that's what worked for me. I said, okay, this happened to me. You know, my parents got divorced. I had a drug addiction. I was raped. I went through a rape trial. You know, I'll even share this with you guys, because half the time when I share this story, people are like, you're lying. After my rapist got out of jail, we had just moved into our new home and signed a lease for a year. And I went outside to check the mail, and he had moved in next to me, 2 doors down. He lived with his mom. I had no clue. So every single day for a year, I lived next to my rapist. You want to talk about insanity? Absolutely atrocious to even think about. So that being said, just to double back here, there are things that have happened to all of us. And for me, I just had to go, okay, yeah, a lot of bad stuff has happened to you, a lot of unbelievable things. And you can either lay in this pit that you have dug, because let's be honest, guys, no matter what has happened to you, I think sometimes when we go to heal and we're in that, that deep trench, we look down and we see a shovel in our hand. Sometimes too. I don't know about you, but sometimes I have too. And we don't realize we're so used to not only the toxic environment that we're used to and this thought pattern, this constant belief that not only are we not enough, we're not smart, we're not pretty, we're not brave, we're a failure, we're a drug addict, we're going to be nothing more. Well, you're digging the hole for yourself. So my advice is to not only put the shovel down, but to get out of the hole, look at things for what they are, have some honest perspective on yourself, and realize that you can be more, that there is a self that is yet to exist. So
it's perfect. So Emily, we're obviously going to have a show with you, so you're gonna have so much floor time to give advice, bring people on, stuff like that. I'm gonna encourage anybody that has a question, go ahead and put it in the comment box right now. If we can get to a question in the next 20 minutes or so, we'd love to answer anything that we can. There's a lot of great positive comments. Yes, Joe. Kelly's driving right now. We hit a little bump, so if you saw this, we're going off-roading on the highway to Austin. But yeah, we have a lot of positivity coming forward. I love Paula's comment. Life still goes on. You have to leave the victim mentality behind and keep living. I love that. So as we mentioned, you are going to have your own podcast. Here is here's what it is. It's going to be a live show right here on the Be the Change Network. It's called Questions Unraveled, and a dialogue of overcoming underline, which means it can be overcoming rape, abuse, victimhood, bad marriage, whatever she has. She's got a bunch of different shows lined up. Tell us how you came up with the idea for the show. You've already talked a little bit about the concept of Unraveled, but you can take us through the whole thing of how we started with one thing, went to another thing. We're like, where is the focus and where can you be of service to other people?
Absolutely. So when I started, I'm very, very passionate about human trafficking and the education of not only sex crimes, but what is going on in this world. We face a pandemic. We face children every single day that not only leave the border, but come across it that are untraceable. There are children every single day that not only lose their life, but are stripped of any type of love and affection that a normal human being should experience. And when I actually met Anthony, that was really where I honed in. And as we started to focus on what the show was going to look like and what I was going to talk about, I realized I had a lot more to say. And that, there are a lot of topics that are kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. And we decided that we wanted to not only kind of have an umbrella for all the crappy things that are going on, but also create a space where things were no longer pushed under the rug. And I grew up in the South. So there's this term that is used. I don't know if everyone says it, but we sweep it under the rug. You hear it on all types of shows in the South and things like that. Someone's cheating, sweep it under the rug. It's nobody's business. Sweep it under the rug. Somebody's raped, sweep it under the rug. Someone got pregnant, sweep it under the rug. I don't know about you guys, but I don't even have a rug anymore. Like it's literally piled up. Think about the Grinch when he's like literally trying to fill his bag. That's me with the rug. And that's kind of when we came up with the idea of leaving just the line. Because we not only want to create a space where people can come and have an open dialogue, which is what Be the Change is about. I want to find everyday people that have not only faced things that I have faced, but faced things that I couldn't imagine. Things that my viewers couldn't imagine. Because where there is growth, we've got to talk about pretty uncomfortable things. And, even my family has a hard time getting behind the whole idea of Unraveled because they're like, you're going to talk about that? Do you really think people need to hear that you were raped or that you're a drug addict? I feel like we shouldn't do that. And I'm like, tough, because for every single person that I have made uncomfortable, because there have been plenty that I've made uncomfortable, there's another person that comes to me, male or female, and says, this happened to me. And because not only did you own your truth, but you talked about it unapologetically, I feel like I can deal with it now. And you experience that one time, and it triumphs every single bad thing that has happened to you. So Unraveled, my whole idea and my whole belief system is about getting to your center. And that's that we are all an inner child. And we are all raising that inner child and trying to get back to it. We're removing the beliefs that we have been taught, the incorrect ways that we have been raised, how to deal with things, how to cope, how to speak, how to communicate. About 40% of the things we're taught as a child are incorrect. Not that the person teaching them was bad, but they're not our beliefs. So when you're overcoming things or looking to re-raise yourself, as I like to say, you realize that all you're trying to do is not only love your inner child, but heal it. And the growth is within the unraveling and getting back to your center. So that is where Unraveled came from. And unraveling to your center is what this podcast is all about. And what I like to tell Anthony is that we're not your typical picket fence, all-American podcast. We're going to talk about uncomfortable things. We're going to challenge you. We're going to challenge the people that are on. We're going to talk about difficult conversations. And I just can't wait to do that.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that you're butting up against your parents. I think that's interesting, and they're like, why would you talk about stuff like that? And I've talked about this before. And again, when people say, well, I'm not a woman, or I haven't been raped, or I'm not black, I'm not purple, I'm not Asian, I can't talk about those things. I don't think that's the way progress happens at all. And I think if we look at a lot of situations of rape, the way that we make rape happen less. I don't think it's impossible to fight evil and expect evil to completely go away in this world. But the way to fight it less is to get those people off the street that are doing the rapes. And a lot of times the worst feeling a woman can have, is a woman or a man, is after they've been raped, they don't want to tell their story because it's hard. And I get that. And people say, well, what could I have done different? And you look at the political climate with Gorsuch, right? No, with Kavanaugh. And you look at a woman that came forward 36 years later and said, well, she didn't feel the time. She didn't feel it was time. The time was right 36 years before. Time is never going to be right. 36 years is certainly not the right time. But if you can have the power, and if you can have the strength, if you can actually fight back what has happened to you, hearing your story can give somebody strength to say, I've been raped and I'm going to confront, press, actually change the next person's life. Because a lot of times the biggest risk is to not say something, not just for your own life, but for the next person the abuser takes advantage of. And there's so much power in the message that you can present. And that's why I really, really, really like the idea of everything. And it's not just about overcoming rape. It's about overcoming addiction, all these different things, which is why I do want to ask one of the questions that came up in the box from Diana. Before I get to actually asking it, I do want to give a note to Stacy. This is a fantastic way of looking at things. My rapist wife ended up working with me. So she was raped, and the rapist wife ended up working with me 15 years after her assault, which she knew nothing about. And I watched her grieve his death because he just died of cirrhosis of the liver the same year she started working with me. She found compassion, healing, and forgiveness, and believed that God lined that up, because we carry that with us for so long, and it's impossible to just completely let it go, but it is possible to leave it behind. So I'll let you comment on that, as well as answer the question, Emily, how do we reach teens before they go down the type of road that you went through?
You know, I think it's so interesting how things can happen. Just sharing that briefly, and I don't know you, I don't know your story, but the thought of having to work with someone so closely, I can actually relate to that. My rapist actually was dating a girl that was in my grade, and he had gotten her pregnant, and they have a child together. And every single day I went to school with her. I had to see her, I had to face her every single day. And I remember how much I hated her in the beginning. And after the trial was over, her and I had this conversation where we both had compassion for one another. I was able to go, I can't imagine loving someone and going, oh my God, are they capable of this? And she was able to go, oh my God, I can't imagine experiencing that. So I do think there is somewhere in the midst of the chaos, there is grace, because that's what God intended. This beautiful chaos is wrapped in grace, and where there is forgiveness, there is grace. And I like to say this every once in a while: where there is rest, there is peace, and where there is peace, there is rest. And that's really, I think, where healing comes from. So I thank you so much for sharing that. And that's so beautiful. And I think that is such a strong reminder to everyone that you never know what you are going to face. But if you face it with compassion and grace and kindness, like our Creator, you would be surprised not only with the healing you're going to get in return, but what you're going to learn. And thank you so much for that. That is so beautiful. And then what was the question?
Yeah. Sorry, I hit the wrong button.
No,
There we
okay.
go. How do we reach teens before they go down the type of road of addiction? Is there anything that we can do before that happens?
Yes and no. Like I said before, and I'll say it again, as a parent, you address things as they happen, and you do the absolute best you can. And we cannot not only save everyone, but we can't create the narrative for other people. And I think as a parent looking at a teen, it's very easy to forget not only that you were a teen yourself before, but that they're going through one of the most challenging ages, the becoming age. And even the 11, 12 age, before, 20 years ago, when we thought of a 10-year-old and 11-year-old, we were like, they're still a baby. No, that is not the case. When you think about your early childhood memories and when you started developing, when you started becoming your own personality, it was in that prepubescent 11 to 13-year age. For most people that I speak with, that's where they start to think about things. That's where they're leaving the childhood, but still gripping to it. So I think, of course, every age is important, but for me personally, through my experience and other parents that I've talked to, other children, that is such an important age. That is an age where not only you support them, but you're just more compassionate. And I think the biggest challenge that I always say to parents, especially with what has happened to me personally, is we want to be in control. We want to protect our kids, right? And sometimes our intuition guides us towards things that aren't as helpful, like what your child's wearing, who they might be friends with. And I've come to realize, especially I actually am kind of like a co-parent to my siblings. Mom had a second generation after me. She was trying to have a baseball team. I don't know. I have 8 siblings, and 5 of them are 10 and under. And for 2 years, my mom lived with us after her stroke, and I pretty much became a mom. And watching every single age, it was like, holy cow, I'm going to mess them up. And there are things you want to be able to control. But I think if you just give a little more support and a little more space and boundaries, because they're becoming adults, they're learning, they're trying to figure out what they like. If you let them not only express themselves, whether it be through clothes, makeup, and just expression in itself, they're going to feel more comfortable to come and share with you. So I think it's about creating a space and a dialogue where a child can be themselves. My 11-year-old brother, he'll come to me and he'll say, I want to ask you something about sex. And I'm like, oh God, okay, and I'll be like, we're doing this. And he'll ask me the most obnoxious question, but he knows nothing about it. Who wants to control the narrative? You as a parent? Or do you want social media controlling the narrative? Facebook, school, buddies? No, you want to control the narrative. So goes right back to unraveling and the topics of the podcast. You've got to have uncomfortable conversations. The biggest thing that I think you can do with your children is not only educate them about sex, educate them about love and the understanding of right and wrong. So many children don't understand what consent is. They don't understand the effects of drugs. Have real hard conversations that are open dialogue where they can ask very uncomfortable questions. Because sometimes kids ask us things and it's like, I don't want to have this conversation with you. But you would much rather you have that conversation than someone else. And I think that's where I find comfort when I'm talking to kids, is that when you open the door and say, nothing's off the table, nothing that you can say to me is wrong, nothing that you can express your beliefs. Not only am I not going to judge you, but I'm also going to respect what you think. And then we're going to have a conversation about it. Because obviously, as adults, we know more, we've experienced more. But if they can feel safe with you, they're going to share with you that they're getting bullied, or that someone wants them to have sex, or that they did try drugs. Because there are kids right now that you would not believe are doing things not only in silent and suffering silently, but don't feel like they have to talk to their parents about it because there is no open dialogue. So that is my biggest advice, is to not only be open and resourceful, but to be kind and compassionate, because really that's all a child needs, is that love and support.
That's perfect, Emily. And I know I was cutting out. You killed it while I was going in and out. So that was perfect. Way to go on that. So essentially, we're just about wrapping up. And you literally are perfectly leading into the final question we'd like to ask everybody on this show, which is, how is change created in this world? And I know you kind of just talked about it for the teenage years and the children, when people are raising their children. What is your philosophies what is your belief system on how to create positive change across the board, no matter the age, no matter the circumstance? How does change happen in this world?
Oh man. Well, I think a clean slate. There's my story and there's your story and then there's the truth. So when we think about change and we think about how we're going to address it, how we're going to talk about it, we have to realize that there's little pieces of me that are wrong and there's little pieces of you that are wrong. There's good in the bad and there's bad in the good. That's life. When we're trying to create change, not only on a home front level, but a global level, we address things within ourselves first. So, what are your core values? What are your standpoints? What is right and wrong for you? Oh, what if I'm sorry, that was a super cool comment.
Yeah, no. So I saw that it was based on what you were saying before. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was letting people
No, it's
see it, but
okay.
yes, I talked to my kids very early not to have sex before marriage, but if found themselves in a situation, I would help them with the child or adoption. If you don't talk to them early, society will. And again, if you're controlling your own narrative, you be the parent, you be the leader of the narrative. You lead in order to keep that open minded or open slate. Sorry, totally just wanted
No,
people to see
you're
that while
okay.
you were
No, that's
continuing on.
awesome.
So
I'm
go ahead.
super
Sorry
glad
about
that
that.
you're having conversations with your kiddos. Oh man, right back to where we were at. uh, change in the world specifically. I always say it starts at home, which kind of leads straight into what that comment was. So that was perfect. I believe that where we create change is within our inner circle. Everyone says the 5 people that you're around, take inventory of that. Look at them, look at where they're going, what their jobs are, what type of money they make, what their belief systems are. Is that who you want to be? They might be fun to drink with. They might be fun to hang out with. I know I'm 22. I've got plenty of friends that are cool as shit, but they have no aspirations, they have no goals. And as we start to walk not only into adulthood, but into our own personal world that we're creating, we have to take inventory. And that means not only changing the conversation, but having hard conversations with our inner self. And I believe that the sooner that you start to not only analyze who you are, but who you want to become, then you can start focusing on the world. And I think and know specifically that not only as parents, but as friends, husband, wife, if we start having those conversations at the dinner table, and then we start having those conversations in our friend groups, then we can start to see a massive shift in the world. And that's really my honest goal, is to have those hard conversations. They're also beautiful because, change resides outside of comfort. We all like to be comfortable. But as we all know, the hard reality of the world is there's a lot of things out there that are not comfy to hear. I mean, come on, human trafficking. Do we want to talk about that? No, that's horrendous. There are newborns right now that are being stripped of any type of innocence that they could ever have. And when you think about that, God, that turns your stomach. But those are conversations that have to be had, because 30 years ago, the idea of that was like, no, that's not possible. There aren't bad people in the world. Yes, there are. There are bad people in the world. There are bad things that happen to good people. But as we change the conversation at home, as we talk and get educated about not only politics, but sex, and educating ourselves in economics and diversity and race, we can create change in the world.
I love that, Em. So here's the deal. We're going to wrap it up. I do want you to just give a preview. The show is going to be starting where our first episode with Emily and Questions Unraveled will be this Saturday. We'll be coming up with a time. Look for it on the Be the Change page. We might even have Emily hop on, do a quick live of just, telling people what's coming up, if she's going to have a first guest. If you have a story that you think would work with Emily, send it to the Be the Change page. Nikki Fatusis, who helps us out, she'll be on the lookout on that Be the Change page on Facebook to see if this might be a good introduction for Emily. She's going to be looking for guests that have overcome and then have a willingness to share their story and for them to work it out together. I do want to give one more final comment. Ashley Renee said about you, she's an amazing woman. I had a rough childhood as well. Her mom actually took me in as a teen when me and her brother got together in high school. And Emily has been an inspiration to me as well. She always has the right things to say, cannot agree more than, I mean, that's exactly what I would say. Emily's brother was my fiance of 10 years. So I've watched her grow, and I'm so proud of the woman she is becoming. So proud of you, Em. And Emily, you have an ability with words. You are articulate, you are gifted. And the key behind creating action with words is when you have a gift and when you've gone through all the things that you have and you have a willingness to try to create change in people and speak, that is the action that needs to be taken. This is not awareness. This is action by using your story and your words to create motivation. So great job, Emily. Thank you for being on. Cannot wait to have you on the show. Any final words or previews you might have for us for what's coming up?
Absolutely. Get ready to get uncomfortable. I'm so excited to not only challenge everyday narratives, but to just share the experience of growth with each one of you. And I just want to say that if you feel not only called, but led to reach out to me, know that there is no story that is too small. There is no thing. Why are you smirking? In a serious moment, y'all.
It was a horrible timing, but Kelly literally just drove up on a curb. She went straight over the parking thing and went up on top of it as we're finishing, and I went, whoop, and she just started cracking up. It was horrible.
Oh man. There is no story that is too small. There is no experience that is not valid. There is no type of experience that you can have that needs to be wrapped in shame. And I'm so excited for this. I'm so excited to get started. And also, I'm going to be writing a book soon. And this is just kind of a bit of a synopsis about where I'm going, what I am doing. Let's see here. Just a little backstory on me. You can find this on Amazon, and it's just words of wisdom. And Unraveled will be in that soon as I get the podcast up and running, and I will begin to share not only snippets of my story, but the people that I have bumped into along the way that have not only saved my life, but have given me the tools to be the woman that I am today. And I hope that when I get the courage to do that, because we're not all perfect and I'm still growing, that it not only inspires you, but helps you incite change. And I'm so glad you guys got to hear my story. And, if you want to reach me at all, feel free to join, hop on my website, shoot me a message, and I will help you in any way that I can.
That is perfect. And, I'm just seeing just the way that you interact and the way that viewers latched onto this, because I can always tell the difference between connection and just a good show or whatever. The viewers consistently went up. I know that Primetime Patriots just started right now with their nightly news, so that's why we have a little dip. But you resonated with people, and I think that that's going to continue as you do have your own show. And I know that you're still trying to find yourself in terms of what the career is going to be that you're at. But what people forget is you don't need to have a license to be a life coach. People get their certifications, they spend 8 million hours, and there's still people that, no offense, suck at it. So you are somebody that I think is going to be able to drastically resonate with people. And as you have your own show, I would encourage you to think about picking up your own clients with people and actually having one-on-ones, or even having a trauma survivors mastermind group where you guys get together and share and be a part of something. And I will work with you all throughout the way, because I think that you are truly the epitome of the concept of ripple effect. Whereas if I can help you, you have my little droplet to you is going to spread waves across the universe. And I think you're amazing. And I honestly, I can't wait. Like I've known since I met you that you have just something about you that just can create massive change. And that's why I have stayed behind you, waited for you patiently to be ready, and knew that you are a tool in a tool chest that is the sharpest and brightest of lights. You are a street light. You are a change agent. You are a change maker. And I cannot thank you more for being on this show. Thank you to whoever is left. Go ahead and start watching Primetime Patriots. You want the update on the news. Emily, thank you so much.
Bye.